So you think you know Canada, eh? Big country, lots of trees, polite people. And yes, fantastic maple syrup. But there's more to us than meets the eye, especially our government. It's a bit like a surprise poutine. Looks familiar, but there's a unique flavor in there. We've got this thing called a parliamentary monarchy. Sounds fancy, right? It just means we have a king or queen, but they don't actually run the day-to-day show. It's a system that's grown out of a long, sometimes messy, but always interesting history, a real Canadian blend. Long before any Europeans showed up with their maps and flags, this land was home to indigenous peoples. We're talking First Nations, Inuit and Métis. They had their own societies, their own governments, their own ways of life. For thousands of years, they lived here, traded here, and built communities from coast to coast to coast. They understood this land in ways newcomers are still learning. Their stories are the first chapter of Canada's story, a really important one that we're still working to honor properly. You can't talk about Canada without starting there. Then came the explorers. First, maybe some Vikings, Leif Erikson and his buddies, around 1,000 years ago. They didn't stick around for long, probably missed the fjords. Then, much later, guys like John Cabot, representing England, poked around the east coast in 1497. Jacques Cartier, flying the French flag, sailed up the St. Lawrence River in 1534. He was looking for gold and a shortcut to Asia. He found neither, but he did find a place he called Kanata, an indigenous word for village. And that, folks, is how we got our name. This set the stage for a big rivalry. France and Britain, two European heavyweights, both wanted a piece of this new world. They wanted the fur, the fish, the land, so they set up colonies. The French had New France, mostly in what's now Quebec and Atlantic Canada. The British had their settlements too. For over a century, it was like a slow-motion hockey game, but with forts and muskets instead of sticks and pucks. This tug of war would shape everything, especially who ended up wearing the crown for Canada. So, France and Britain duked it out. There were battles, treaties, the whole 9 yards. A big one was the 7 Years' War. You might know it as the French and Indian War down south. In 1759, the British snagged Quebec City in the famous Battle of the Plains of Abraham. Tough stuff. By 1763, with the Treaty of Paris, France handed over most of its North American territories to Britain. Just like that, a huge chunk of what would become Canada was under the British Crown. No vote, no referendum, just a change of flags. That's how the British monarch became our monarch too. Fast forward about 100 years. Things were changing, the colonies were growing. People started thinking, hey, maybe we'd be stronger together. So in 1867, leaders from Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick got together. They hammered out a deal called Confederation. This created the Dominion of Canada. It wasn't full independence, not yet, but it was a big step. And they decided to keep the British monarch as our head of state. We became a parliamentary monarchy. We have our own parliament to make laws, but the king or queen is still officially the boss in a symbolic way. Now, this parliamentary monarchy thing makes us a bit different. Our neighbors to the south, the Americans, had a big revolution to ditch their king. Good for them. They love their fireworks. We took a different path. We kind of evolved. We kept the monarch, but we also built a robust democracy. The king or queen reigns, but they don't rule. That's the key. They represent the state, not a political party. It's a system signed for stability, a bit like good old Canadian-made winter tire, reliable even when things get slippery. So, who does what in this setup? Well, we have the monarch, currently King Charles III. Since he's usually busy in London, he has a representative in Canada called the Governor General. This person does all the royal duties here, like giving royal assent to laws. That's the final stamp that makes them official. Then we have the Prime Minister, who is the head of government, the person actually running the country with their team. And we have Parliament, made up of elected folks, the House of Commons, and appointed ones, the Senate, who debate and pass those laws. It's a team effort, sort of. Canada didn't just become fully independent overnight after 1867. It was more like a teenager slowly getting more freedom from their parents. We made our own decisions, but Britain still had a say in some big stuff, especially foreign policy and changes to our constitution. We fought in World War I, and our soldiers showed the world what Canada was made of. That sacrifice and bravery earned us more respect and a bigger voice on the world stage. We were growing up, and it was time for the rules to reflect that. A huge moment came in 1931 with something called the Statute of Westminster. Sounds a bit dry, I know, but it was a game changer. This British law basically said that Canada, along with other dominions like Australia and New Zealand, were now equal in status to Britain. We could make our own laws without British Parliament being able to override them. We were masters of our own legislative house. This was a massive step towards full independence. We were driving the car even if the owner's manual was still technically written in London. Then there's the King Byng affair from 1926. This one's a bit of a political soap opera, but super important. Prime Minister Mackenzie King wanted to call an election. The Governor General at the time, Lord Byng, said no, this was a big deal. Usually the GG just does what the PM advises. King eventually got his election, but the whole kerfuffle raised questions about the Governor General's powers and Canada's relationship with the Crown's representative. It showed that even though the GG's powers are rarely used against a PM, they exist, and it pushed Canada to define its autonomy even more clearly. The final big leap to full independence was in 1982. That's when we patriated our constitution. Before this, if we wanted to change our own constitution, we had to ask the British Parliament to do it for us. A bit embarrassing, eh? Like having to ask your mum to change the settings on your phone. So Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau brought it home. Queen Elizabeth II herself came to Canada to sign the Constitution Act, 1982, which included our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now, Canada was truly, completely, 100% in charge of its own destiny, while still keeping the Queen as our Queen. So, here we are in 2025. We've got King Charles III on our money and as our head of state. He even visited Canada not too long ago. These royal visits are a big deal. They're not just about waving and fancy dinners, though there's plenty of that. They are a chance to highlight Canadian achievements, meet diverse communities, and reinforce the historic ties. For many, it's a connection to tradition and continuity. Plus, let's be honest, who doesn't love a bit of pomp and circumstance now and then? it brightens things up. Let's hit some fun facts. The name Canada, as I mentioned, likely comes from the Huron-Iroquois word Kanata, meaning village or settlement. Pretty cool. And while the monarch doesn't make speeches in our parliament every day, it has happened. Queen Elizabeth II addressed our parliament several times. A big step for modern Canada was in 2021, when Mary Simon became our first Indigenous Governor-General. That's history right there, showing the monarchy can evolve and reflect Canada's diversity. It's about more than just old traditions. Today, the King's role in Canada is mostly symbolic, but symbols matter. He's the formal head of state, representing Canada to the world and to Canadians. The Governor-General carries out the day-to-day duties, signing bills into law, formally appointing the Prime Minister, and representing Canada at important events. The Crown is meant to be a unifying force above the political fray. While politicians come and go, the Crown provides a sense of stability and continuity. It's like the North Star for our ship of state, always there. So why keep a king in a modern, independent democracy like Canada? Well, for many, it's a link to our history, a system that has served us pretty well. It's part of our unique identity, different from our American friends. The monarchy provides a non-political head of state, which can be handy when politicians are, well, being politicians. It's a system that's uniquely Canadian, a blend of old and new, tradition and progress. And in a world that's always changing, sometimes it's good to have a few things that connect us to where we came from, even if it involves a crown.